Hello, my name is Aiden Yeager, and in this podcast I will be talking about the touchy subject that is video games and violence. This assignment was given to me by my 4th period English teacher, so without further ado, let's get started. This argument has two sides: whether video games cause violence, or whether they do not. The key terms most media and news outlets like to point out is that video games are responsible for mass shootings and causing youth to become more violent. This isn't anything new, however. Video games have been at the height of controversy since 2009, ever since Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 was released. However, due to the multiple school shootings and the stories told by mothers that their kid has become increasingly aggressive due to video games, which is a main contributor to why people see it as an issue. If this issue doesn't get resolved soon, everyone will be affected, because if the government decides to censor or ban video games, it will actively violate the Constitution, which can lead to great further consequences in the future. To reiterate, I am arguing that video games do not cause violence, and to prove it, I have 3 pieces of evidence from 3 different credible sources. My first piece of evidence is by looking at the Crime Data Explorer made by the FBI, which states from the past 10 years, out of the almost 3 million aggravated assault charges, only 13% were committed by minors, and is going down by almost 1% each year. This is a great example of using logos, as I am using statistics to prove my point. Another piece of evidence that I possess is from psychologyscience.org, which states out of 275 participants, none of them became more violent or easy to anger after playing video games for 1 year. This is another example of logos, as I am using scientific reasoning to prove my point. My last piece of evidence is from the Royal Society of Science, which says, quote, "There is no link between video games and aggressive behavior." This is an example of ethos, as Royal Science is using their credibility to prove their point. However, now we'll be getting to the other side of the issue. This side argues that video games do, in fact, cause violence and are responsible for several school shootings. A piece of evidence this side uses to back up their claim is that almost 20% of school shooters played violent video games, and of that 20%, 80% of those shooters blame video games for committing those crimes. However, this is incorrect, because we found evidence that states mental illness is actually the main cause of school shootings, as stated by the National Library of Medicine. Quote, "Reports suggest that up to 60% of perpetrators of mass shootings in the United States since 1970 displayed symptoms including acute paranoia, delusions, and depression before committing their crimes." This is another great example of logos, as I am using facts and statistics to prove my point. The opposing side, which states that video games do, in fact, cause violence, like to bring up many fallacies that are completely false, as I've just disproved them. These fallacies are that video games cause violence, that they contribute to the school shootings, and that they create kids to commit more crimes. But, as we just saw, that is blatantly untrue. And now, for a quick and final summary. Crime rates of children are down. Fact. Multiple studies show that there is no link to video games and violence, and that mental health is a larger contributor to school shootings. Fact. This argument hits pretty close to me, as I've been playing video games ever since I was like 2 years old. And personally, I don't believe video games are a contributor to violence, and I don't think